Judgment and Democracy. Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, the title of my speech today is Judgment and Democracy. There are, as we read in our daily papers and also see on television, many organisations and terrorist groups facing dilemmas at the present time. Coming to immediate mind is Al-Qaeda and its leader, Osama bin Laden. There is also the Taliban, now filtering back into Afghanistan from Pakistan, and recently we've had Hezbollah in Lebanon, backed by the Assyrians and the Iranians, also in a struggle with Israel. But there is one organisation in the Western world facing the biggest and gravest dilemma of all time. In fact, the biggest dilemma in history, ever. This organisation was simply called Majestic. The history of the organisation called Majestic is in itself a truly remarkable story. An organisation that started small but is now colossal. Its dilemma is when to formally announce that extraterrestrial contact has been established. This to a fledgling and a squabbling world, but also a world that has to grow up quickly in the not too distant future. For once it has been formally stated, we will, whether we like it or not, have moved into a completely new era. It is a strange fact that virtually everyone in the Western world has heard of Al-Qaeda and knows its spiritual leader, but barely anyone has heard of an organisation called Majestic, let alone know who its leaders are. Yet, it is this very organisation that is going to direct and shape the future for mankind. For we as a species are slowly but surely entering into a new community with a lot of help from our friends. But it is this organisation's timetable and the manner in which it does so, also the implications to our peoples of just how Majestic does formally announce that extraterrestrial contact has been established, that concerns me. Majestic was formed after an executive order by the then US President Harry Truman, sometime around 1947. It was headed by America's most senior scientific and military experts, with a few senior politicians involved initially. It's my understanding that there were 12 people in charge of this organisation at the time. Majestic was established directly after the crash of a UFO in Roswell, New Mexico, where not only was the crashed UFO recovered, but its occupants too were also recovered. In addition, prior to this crash, there were numerous UFO sightings and incidents during the Second World War and directly afterwards. It was then that the President, Harry Truman, realised that something extraordinary was happening around the world and over America. It was not long before it was established that UFOs were real and not an illusion, that they were extraterrestrial in origin. Finally, that they were not pilotless objects, but had occupants flying them. Majestic was then given a mandate to try and establish contact with the extraterrestrials visiting Earth. This, I believe, was achieved around the early 1950s. Contact was not only sought with one group of visitors, but was established with others as well. From this moment on, we have been in a new era for mankind. Majestic, since its creation around 1947, has run parallel to every elected administration, right up to the present day. It has been funded through black budgets to attain its secrecy. As an organisation that started small, it is now colossal. Who its unelected leaders are and who are those administering this organisation, I genuinely do not know. Since 1947, this organisation and its members have faced literally unimaginable dangers in the dealings with extraterrestrials. The list of this organisation's achievements is virtually endless. Its members from the very beginning started from scratch with no knowledge at all of who they were dealing with or what they were going to face. The only facts they knew were whoever was visiting the Earth was without doubt and more technologically advanced than ourselves, and probably hundreds of years ahead of us. What their mission in coming here was, not known. During President Nixon's era, Majestic, as it was then formed into a total satellite government outside the control of Washington, D.C. This provided cover for the visitors, plus a totally new concept for protecting all information relating to the subject. Indeed, it is this satellite government's role to interface with extraterrestrial visitors, whether they be friend or foe. It is interesting that the greatest challenge this satellite government has yet to face has yet to happen. But to those in Majestic, let me state, we are now in the most defining moment of this century. Be under no illusion about this. For what happens in the not too distant future will shape how mankind moves forward into this and new era for the next century or more. In the book, written by Colonel Philip J. Corso, retired, the day after Roswell, we are given a first-hand glimpse of how crashed alien craft artifacts have been reverse engineered. Indeed, from the very beginning of Majestic until today, an entirely new technological industry and era has been achieved, from the integrated circuit chip to Silicon Valley in 50 years. The list also includes image intensifiers, fiber optics, super tenacity fibers, molecular alignment, metallic alloys, particle beams, electromagnetic propulsion systems, and lasers, to name but a few. Majestic's success in protecting mankind from the shock that we are far from alone in the universe has been completely successful. For the last 60 years, the subject has been shrouded in secrecy. The magnificent job you have done in keeping from us, the ordinary citizens, that we are not alone, is in itself a truly remarkable achievement. The dilemma of when to formally announce that contact has been established is a very difficult one to make. Indeed, I could spend hours debating the pros and cons, the rights and wrongs, specifically about this issue. However, this speech is an open speech to all members of this satellite government formally called Majestic. Indeed, my speech is about judgment and democracy. The total success in protecting mankind from the shock that we are not alone has been achieved. That from me is not in question. Indeed, I can only say you have done a spectacular job in hiding this very truth. Your efforts to reverse engineer the technology from crashed extraterrestrial craft has changed our current society for the majority of the citizens of our world, and I am sure will continue to do so for the next 50 years. Again, you have done a superb job. The fact that we have established contact with numerous extraterrestrial visitors, some benevolent, some not, visitors from other worlds bringing a wealth of knowledge to us, a fledgling world in its miracles, is of course truly amazing. But what is truly amazing is that virtually all of our elected politicians are unaware of this. Fact, not fiction. My father's generation endured the Second World War. His youth, from 17 years of age, was spent in the merchant navy, dodging U-boats and torpedoes for the duration of the greatest conflict in our history. His entire generation gave their all in the fight for freedom and democracy. I probably do not need to remind you of the cost of this generation in terms of life and blood. Ruined lives in totally destroyed countries, the whole of Europe and the Pacific, a total and complete bloodbath, Europe in devastation. This, my father's generation, fought for democracy. The United States, Great Britain and the Soviet Union lost many, many millions of lives in the fight, but democracy prevailed. It is important to remember that this generation has not completely passed away. Yet, the very democracy that they fought for and many millions gave their lives for is today a very different democracy indeed. Currently, democracy is unaware even of the era we are in. The elected representatives of the United States and Great Britain are virtually all in complete ignorance regarding this matter. Such is the sorry state of our democracy. But this speech is not a challenge to your authority in your dealings with extraterrestrials. But this speech is about judgment and democracy. I am sure that such an intelligent organisation as yourselves, with some of the best brains in the world, would have formulated a timetable as such to prepare the world for the inevitable news of our contact with visitors from other worlds. But my very reason for speaking is very simple. It is morally repugnant to me that I, as an ordinary citizen, that I, as the humblest elected member of a mere city councillor for the St John and All Saints ward of Winchester, that the elected representatives of my nation, the members of Parliament, know nothing